You are listening to the Empowering Working Moms podcast, Real Talk with Dr. Priyanka Nayak, a show to help professional moms in survival mode to take hold of their lives and thrive. If you're ready to take powerful action to create your best life, then this is the show for you. I'm your host, Dr. Priyanka Nayak, board-certified internal medicine physician and certified life coach. Now let's get to it and dive in. You are listening to the Empowering Working Moms podcast, episode number 47. Hello there. I am so happy to have you here listening to today's podcast episode. And so I'd like to say hi to all my usual listeners or the people who are subscribed to my podcast, or also welcome if you're a new listener. I'm so happy that you found me some way, somehow, found this podcast. And if you're here listening, I'm guessing that you are a professional mom, you're a high achiever, you might be really tired, struggling with burnout, and I know you have an amazing resume, checking all the boxes, right, of success. And we really are conditioned to believe that once we achieve XYZ, then we're going to be happy, right? But oftentimes people find themselves unhappy. And you don't have to be with a life of a lack of happiness or feel exhausted anymore. Imagine a life with no more burnout, more confidence to make decisions, more peace of mind, more balance. And this is so possible for you. And you can do it quickly. It's been possible for me and my clients. With a little work, and in 90 days or less, you totally can be out of burnout and enjoy your life again. Check out my free on-demand masterclass so you can watch it whenever you want. 4 steps to overcome burnout, get rid of overwhelm, and finally get your peace of mind back. We will put the link in the show notes. Today's topic is really going to dig into the real talk part of the title of this podcast, Real Talk with Dr. Priyanka Nayak, because one of my superpowers, or so I've been told, is my straight shooterness / sense of honesty. And I tend to tell it as it is. My friends give me feedback that I'm the kind of person that if you wanted to know the truth or you really wanted a sincere answer, you will get it from me. And that being said, that bleeds into the work I do. And it's not, it's funny because I started this coaching business originally wanting to help people with stress and time management, but then realizing that the work was so much more powerful and so much deeper than that. And really, there are so many women silently suffering. And I say silently because there are certain problems that people feel that they cannot talk about, unfortunately, right? And you keep it bottled up inside. And then you feel like you're all alone, and you're not. No matter what your problem is, I promise you, there are so many people on this planet. Somewhere out there are probably hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, even more, struggling with the exact same issues that you are. And maybe they're not talking about it. So we're going to talk about it right here. And we're going to get into the hard times in life, okay? Because life can be so beautiful, but it can be challenging. It can be hard. And sometimes things get dark. Sometimes they get ugly. And that's just not the kind of dinner conversation that most people have. So this is a space where I'm going to acknowledge hard times here today. I'm going to acknowledge them. I'm going to categorize them because I find that categorizing and organizing things takes away their sting and really can allow you to see things more clearly. And while I'm going to state a bunch of hardships in today's episode, the reason I'm doing this is to really acknowledge that there is struggle, acknowledge that there are certain types of struggle, acknowledge that this is life. Life is 50% good, 50% bad. And we're going to talk about the bad today, the struggles. And this is one way that we can normalize our own struggles, normalize our human experience, even if we feel alone. We are not. And I will also give you some insider info. What's really fascinating, I have statistics on my podcast episode downloads, and some of the most popular episodes were the series that I did on living with an alcoholic spouse or dealing with alcoholism. It was really fascinating that those were so popular because clearly that is something that's happening. People are having to deal with an alcoholic spouse. And yet, the people that I meet in my life, patients, or even, when I'm out to dinner with people, this hardly ever comes up. And yet, clearly, it is there. So I'm naming a bunch of categories today of hardships so that you know that you are not alone. Okay. And this also, of course, the struggle and the hard part of life is it gives us a barometer for what's good. And then we can appreciate and be grateful for the beautiful things, the good things. So I'm going to break down hardships/struggles into the common hard. Okay. So that's common hard, which often that's stuff that people know about. It's common, it's out there. Then there's hard. So that's within, it's kind of a mouthful, right? That's also normal. So this is a normal, hard change, a big change but people do feel comfortable talking about it. And the last category of hard is the quote unquote out there hard. So this is the hard that you might be dealing with. You feel like you're alone. You feel like you can't talk about it. And so that's the out there hard. So those are the three categories of hard. And the first two, I think people will resonate with, and they're going to say, yeah, no, I feel okay talking about this. But then when we get to the last category, the out there hard, that's where people might feel more isolated. And I just want you to know that no matter how great somebody's life seems in pictures on Instagram, people purport their lives, families, marriages, externally often to be way better than they actually are on the inside. So don't be fooled. And I want you to listen to today's episode and realize that we all have our own individual struggles, and some of them can be tough, hard to talk about, dark, etc. Okay, so let's start with the common hard. Again, these are hard topics that are fairly common. They come up. You're going to talk about these easily in a group setting, like a dinner with girlfriends. These kinds of issues are fairly accepted by society and within the realm of normal. So this is the job, the kids, the marriage, balancing it all, right? That's really hard. Having a high power, serious job or having a quote unquote typical man's job when you're a woman or a mom. Mortgages, having a big house, having the upkeep of that, having to coordinate all the things, the landscaping, the bills, all these things, right? That's tough. Managing the kids' activities, they're piling up. What activities do you do? How are you going to get them there? Regular problem, but hard. External pressures, like what expectations people might have from you, either others that you know or your family. Making friends as an adult. This is so hard, okay? It's just because you're not in school anymore. People tend to either not have the time, not want to make time. They're more guarded, or maybe they're content with the friends they have, so they don't want to make new friends. Finding time. That's to have fun. Time for hobbies, time for activities, time for your own appointments, right? And if you're, around 40, please get that mammogram scheduled, okay? We need to, that's just my doctor plug, but we all really need to keep up with our own medical preventive measures. Work-life balance. Everybody talks about that because that's a tough one, right? Feeling guilty as a mom. This one, I did originally put this in the normal, like common hard. This is common, but I don't know that it's talked about. Advancing in your career. That's tough, right? The invisible workload. That's basically having to do it all at home, having to do it all at work. This is fairly common and mainly talked about. Microaggressions in the workplace. So being asked, for example, if you can handle your job and your family at the same time, or being treated as if your commitment to your job is less than your male colleagues. We know this happens. I don't know if we talk about it enough. feeling like you want to belong, like wanting to belong. That's hard, right? Or feeling like you're good enough. If you're not good enough, you're feeling not good enough. That's a tough problem to have. But those are all in the category of the common hard. And then we get to hard. Okay. So hard is within the realm of normal, but a really big change because as we all know, transition and change in life is hard because we crave stability. We crave the same. Change is really tough for our systems to withstand. As you can imagine, it's a part of our survival mode, our survival instinct to have stability. So here are the big changes in life that are quote unquote normal, but can really be tough. Pregnancy, the change in your body, the change in your diet, the change in your schedule, having to go to all these appointments, all the while working, the ultrasounds and all that, having to see your weight change on the scale. I found that pretty tough. The scale would just have, I don't even know. It was like magical powers. It felt like not in a good way, like a sorceress, bad powers of increasing a number in ways that I just didn't understand because I felt like I was eating okay. And yet the scale would just be exponentially going up. It was horrible. Anyway, pregnancy, right? Moving cities, moving homes. Homes are such a tough one because you have memories there and it's just hard to part with. A change of a nanny. A nanny is, or an au pair, these are really people who have intimate contact with your families. And it can be so hard to have a change, let one go, or one leaves you, or you move and you lose your nanny. I've talked about this before, but when I moved, losing my nanny, one of my best nannies ever, that was so hard for me. Like the first month of my move, I cried missing my nanny more than I missed anything. A change of work colleagues, a change of a boss. And this is not really a normal change, but this was a change where people were in it together, and that is COVID. That was so traumatic to mankind, to our systems, and our lives changed overnight, really never to be the same again. That was a massive change that was so tough and in some ways continues to be. So that's that category. And then we've got the out there hard where you might feel isolated, you might feel alone, but you are not. And these are topics that often have a lot of shame tied to them. Like, what does this say about me if this is happening to me? So, one is an unhelpful spouse. That's really kind of, some people talk about that openly, but some people don't. And they don't want to admit that their spouse isn't helping them with their children or they're not helping them at home and, that they feel resentful. So that's a pretty tough one. Abusive relationships where somebody is swearing at their partner, berating their partner, insulting their partner in fights, that's pretty bad and isn't openly discussed. Or if somebody is physically abusing their partner, let's say slapping their partner, punching a hole in the wall, that kind of stuff, that is pretty mortifying and not discussed. Other issues with a spouse, like we're not having enough sex. My spouse has sexual dysfunction. My spouse does not want to have sex with me, and I don't know why. I'm having trouble having a baby, right? Infertility is another tougher topic that people don't want to admit to because it's painful. Infidelity is another one. My spouse I found out cheating on me. Like, what a horrible, horrible thing that often people don't want to talk about, not just because they're ashamed, which I think shame is a huge part of it, but also because sometimes verbalizing horrible things, it makes them more real, and that's painful. And just in general, these situations are really painful. So to open up about your deepest, darkest pain, you have to feel really, really safe, right? So it really depends on who your friends are, who your family is, and if you feel safe telling them, for example. But people often keep these things to themselves and they feel like it's such an abnormal problem that they are alone in this problem. And you're not. I promise that this kind of stuff is going on all the time. And actually, this does come up in coaching my clients sometimes, or even patients from time to time. The other interesting, it's not really, well, I guess it's not really interesting, but the other one that comes up, as I mentioned in the beginning of this podcast episode, is addiction in the family. There's so much shame with that. So that is a topic that can be really isolating, and living with addiction is probably one of the most confusing, difficult things to deal with. And if people haven't gone through it, they really don't know. So this is a topic that can be really hard to talk about based off the shame, but also feeling like no one can relate, no one can understand the chaos that ensues in active addiction, and especially in marriages or even with children involved. I mean, it is really brutal. But that's another one where people feel alone, and I want you to know that you are not. Another one is being a single mom, or on the younger side, you're a single mom and nobody has gotten divorced yet. This is super isolating too, and one can feel very alone, even though we know that the divorce rate in this country is about 50-50, so it isn't really uncommon. But when people are going through this, they feel shame, they feel pain, and they feel alone. So again, if you're in this category, you are not alone. Being divorced or being separated. I think separated in some ways is even worse, because when people separate, they often, let's say they move out from their marital home and take some space, maybe see if the marriage can work. That's a really weird in-between place. And of course, no one wants to tell anyone because they don't want to admit that there are problems in their marriage. But then if they get back together, right, then why would you tell anyone? So this is another one of those categories that's kind of not talked about, but I think it definitely happens. So these are just examples that I could come up with. There are a million others. And what I want you to walk away from this episode with is the feeling of community, that all of you listeners out there, you're not alone. There's so many other people dealing with the exact same thing as you, and it's okay. Like, this is all a part of our human experience, and it is not perfect. And that's why I talked about perfectionism last week, because we really need to embrace our imperfections, our human experience, and things going in a way that we don't want them to, or, it starts shattering our Instagram image. But that's okay. We get to be human. And I think I forgot to mention this in the first part of the episode, but I'm going to do a series on hard times. So this is part 1. And I'm going to do either two or 3 episodes total on hard times, also talking about how to deal with hard times when they come up, and what can we do to give ourselves inner peace and peace of mind, and not be totally miserable, not be totally stressed when we're going through any of these aforementioned tough times, because they are going to come up. We all have to deal with negative things in our lives, be it big, small, or common hard, like I talked about, or hard, but within the realm of normal, or out there hard, which is more isolating, where people feel like their problems are not normal. And there are ways to cope with this. There are steps we can take to create a life with inner peace, regardless of our circumstances. And that, of course, you can imagine, is what I teach my clients, to find peace, happiness, confidence, no matter what's going on in their lives. And this really leads to an exhaustion-free, burnout-free life. And this is possible for you. It has been for me and my clients. You can be out of burnout and enjoying your life in less than 90 days. So again, I encourage you to check out my free masterclass on 4 steps to overcome burnout, get rid of overwhelm, get your peace of mind back. The link will be here. And you can also just even check out my program, Overcome Burnout for Good, and directly sign up. And I think the website for that is program.stresscleansemd.com/work with me. And I am so appreciative of you listening today and being here. And I will talk to you next week. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Empowering Working Moms podcast, Real Talk with Dr. Priyanka Nayak. If you are ready to get unstuck and out of survival mode to live your best life, I want to invite you to book a free 30-minute consultation call with me. To get started, visit priyankanayakmdcoaching.as.me. Link in the show notes.